All right, welcome class to Living a Hero's Journey. We're on a little bit of a field trip today in my living room. If you don't know me, because someone else teaches your class, my name is Will, and joining me to help us play our Hero's Journey class today is someone calling me, but we're just going to ignore that. We have Sky.
Hi.
And who are you playing as today, Sky?
I am playing as F6, who is a damsel in distress.
Excellent. F6, the damsel in distress. I'm also here joined by Mr. David.
Hi guys, I'm David, and I'm playing Crete, and I am a trickster.
He is also a Jawa. So that's why he's got beady little eyes. All right, excellent. But just to make sure who else we have here, we're going to go ahead and do our roster so I know who's here. So if you're here, just go ahead, raise your hand, and say here. Michael Stardust. Excellent. Jillian Nova Buster. Sean Solo. Just say here, Sean Solo. Sean Solo.
Here.
Thank you. Jack Wookie the Cookie. Thank you. Leo, where are you?
Here.
Excellent. All right. Now, before we get into the game today, we're going to talk about the two archetypes that we are going to focus on. And that is our damsel in distress and our trickster. But excellent. So our damsel in distress. A really good example that everyone knows about is Princess Peach. She is a princess, and she's always getting in trouble. She's always getting captured by Bowser, or she is tied up on the side of a railroad when you play Mario Party, and the train is going to run her over, and then Mario always has to save the day. And it's because whatever it is that Princess Peach is doing, she's always putting herself in danger, and so she always needs to be saved. Now, typically, damsel means a female character, but we don't always have to roll with that, because today Sky is going to be playing F6, who's a damsel in distress, but he's getting in distress today because he's a soldier who is always on the front lines and always out there needing help from his friends, maybe because he's a little bit too courageous and goes a little bit too forward, a little bit too fast. Can you think of any other damsels in distress? So go ahead, take a quick minute and write down any damsels in distress that you can think of. So pause, write a couple down. I also have another one up here. Daphne from Scooby-Doo. Daphne always needs some extra help. I'd also argue that maybe Scrappy does as well, and they all do. But most importantly, she's the one who's always needing the extra help from all the other group. So, write some down of your own examples, and keep in mind, as Sky today is playing Damsel in Distress, is she playing the Damsel in Distress good, or do you have some better ideas that she could do? And keep writing that down. Our other one that we have today is the trickster. The trickster. All right, the trickster survives the day through humor and being very, very tricky. So an example of a trickster might be Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean. He's always being very humorous, and he's always making jokes, and he's trying to use his jokes to misdirect the bad guys from watching what he's actually doing. He'll say, look over here, while he is doing something over here. He'll act maybe like he doesn't know what he's doing while he grabs a rope and swings around the boat and ends up on the other side so that he can run away and get away. And so that's a really good example of a trickster. Another good example of a trickster, this is kind of a bad guy trickster, but Loki from the Avenger movies. Loki, he's always telling lies and telling people things that aren't necessarily true. He also has some powers that make him be able to look like other characters, so he's tricking them. So he's tricking them in a different way than Jack Sparrow is. While Jack Sparrow will use a little bit of humor and misdirection, Loki can actually use his powers to actually make things look different. Now, our character today, Crete, played by David, he's a Jawa. He doesn't actually have any abilities, so he's going to have to use his wit and his intelligence to maybe use misdirection and some his humor to misdirect what's happening in our story. Now, before I get into where we all left off last week, we're going to go ahead and do a quick writing prompt. A quick writing prompt. And I like to call this showing versus telling. Because, as I put this together, it's going to stay up. Showing versus telling. When we write something, we want to show what we're writing, not just plainly put it on the page in a boring way. So this is going to be a writing prompt that you can do right now along with us. Okay? And to start with, it is the forest had big trees. The forest had big trees. And an example of showing instead of telling is the Emerald Kingdom stood its ground with wooden soldiers as high as the sky. And so what this is it's the Emerald Kingdom is the forest. And the trees are wooden soldiers. And they're standing as tall as the sky. So that's our example. From very boring, the forest, blah, 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 had big trees, to the Emerald Kingdom stood its ground with wooden soldiers as high as the sky. Now, your job is to go ahead and convert this next one, which is right here. The desert. Oh, moving the camera around. He's trickstering. There we go. Now can we see it? There we go. The desert was dry. The desert was dry. But what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to do 3 quick minutes. I want you to convert the desert the desert was dry into something more colorful, something more showing. Maybe it's a windy desert. You can add things to this desert if you want. Is your character walking through the desert and noticing things? So we're going to go ahead and do about 2.5 minutes to think of this. If you write one down and it's a good one, go ahead and write a second one down. We're going to write ours down and we're going to share ours with each other. And I want you to write yours down and then you're going to send me that with your homework. All right, let's go ahead. All right, another 30 seconds or so. All right, looks like Sky is still working on hers.
Teacher's pet.
Whoa, no one's a teacher's pet here. Moving on. All right, getting to excellent. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop our timer there. I'll go ahead. I'll start with mine. Now, I always, when I think of a desert, I always get certain imagery in my head. I always kind of get the imagery that the sand, the big sand dunes are like a big golden ocean. So what I kind of put was the sea of sand swallowed me whole as I swam through the dust. And so that's kind of what my image you're getting, kind of like it's an ocean and you have to swim through that dust. Maybe it's a dust storm that I'm describing. Yeah. So I'm swimming through it. All right. So that was mine. Mr. David, what did you get for yours?
The sun scorched the air, and not a vapor of moisture could be found to wet the sands of the desert.
Excellent. Go ahead, read it one more time for me.
The sun scorched the air, and not a vapor of moisture could be found to wet the sands of the desert.
Excellent. We definitely added a lot more than just the desert was dry. He told us how it was dry. The sun was scorching and making it so there was no vapor in there. So that's a really good one. Excellent job. All right, let's go ahead and move on over here to Lady Miss Sky.
The air was parched in the sandy winds of the desert, which drained all the clouds in the sky.
Ooh, I like that. Read it, the first part just real quick for me one more time.
The air was parched in the sandy winds of the desert.
Oh, go ahead. The air was parched. The air, it's not a human being, it's not an animal, it's not a living creature, but she's saying these words, she's putting this sentence together as if the air itself is capable of wanting to be thirsty. It's parched. It's so dry that the air is thirsty, is basically what she's saying there. Go ahead, read that second half.
In the sandy winds of the desert, which drained all the clouds in the sky.
And then she's just going on more and more detail. And so one of the things that you can do is you can say that, you know, kind of like I did. I made the trees soldiers. I made them like creatures. So your environment, you can make it sound like it's alive by giving it characteristics like something that would be alive. All right, so moving on from that writing prompt, I'm going to go ahead and put our original prompt back up here. Also, if you didn't notice, my cast is off. Yay! But my hand's still, I can only move it like this much. I can't do my fist very well. So I'm going to go ahead and move this. Oh well. This is, there we go. There we go. All right, now we can see that better. All right. Now, last we left off, I had all of us writing what our characters would do in a dialogue with Naybob the Hut. And if you can see right here, we have Mr. Naybob the Hut and some of his goons. Some of his goons are up here hanging out. And coming just into the picture, we have Mr. Crete, who I just drew a little like happy face and like a little cloak over him. So we have Mr. Crete, and we also have our soldier, F6, who's wearing his normal Rebel Alliance outfit. We have the walls of Naybob's hut. I also have these circles drawn on here, and these circles represent big pillars, something maybe you could hide behind. There's a few doors over here. Go ahead, I'm gonna draw up, like I said, can't hold on to anything. There's a few doors I'm gonna add in here with some circles so that if the characters need to escape. All right. So the last place we left off was they were talking to Naybob the Hut. And that was what your homework was, to write down. But we're going to see how they talk to Naybob the Hut. So they enter into this dungeon that's wet. It's wet in here from the sweat of all of the frog monsters in here. And Naybob himself, his own sweat. And over in the corner is a jar of ooze and goos that the different creatures inside this palace keep going over and eating and drinking from. It's currently very quiet inside, and only the guards and Naybob and our two heroes are here as they approach Naybob. What they're looking for from Naybob is to ask him if he will himself hack into the Imperial droid so they can get the information out of it. So that's what they're looking to convince Naybob to do, is to get information out of the Imperial droid. As they enter, Naybob says, "Ho ho 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 ha 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 ha! Who's here summoning my presence?"
We are.
"And who is we? State your names."
I am F6.
What a name. It's just a letter and a number. Ha 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 ha. "And you, small creature there."
I'm Bob.
"What do you mean you're Bob? What kind of a name is Bob? I've never heard of such a name Bob before."
I'm a Jawa.
"A Jawa. Disgusting creatures. And why have you come to my palace?"
We need your help encrypting this droid. We need information from it.
"And why should I help you?"
Because we could help you.
"And how do you intend to help me?"
Well, we have skills.
"You have skills? And you, Sir Bob? What skills might you have?"
I'm really fast.
Really fast. Really fast. Alright, we're going to go ahead and stop and do another quick writing prompt. And what this writing prompt is going to be is we are going to go ahead, and what I want you to do this time is to describe what your character is. I want you to pretend that your character is here. And I want you to describe what your character might be saying, but most importantly, what is your character seeing? I've described some of the things in this room and some of the things in this palace, but there could be anything in this palace. What else might be here? What else could be here? So we're going to go ahead and do that for a quick 2 minutes. What else might be here? So go ahead, write that down, both of us, and you guys on the other side. What is inside? Is there something else? Are there other people about to come through the door? What does the ceiling look like? Is it flat? Is it glass? Can you see the sky from here? Write anything that you want to be inside. No wrong answers. And I don't care about spelling. Try to use our showing technique that we talked about. Showing, not telling. Alright, I think maybe we went a little bit longer than 2 minutes, but I had a good little roll. I wanted to put everything down. How about you there, Sky?
Almost done.
Alright, I'll go ahead and start with what I put. Below the floor, a stench of 1,000 dead rats permeated the air up from the vents below, causing my stomach to turn and twist. Vomiting was sure to come next. So I added something that I had previously not described. It was completely not here, hadn't said it before, but I added it in there. Alright, Mr. David, what did you go ahead and add for us?
Flickering candles causing running shadows along the wall.
Ooh, flickering candles. I like that. And they're causing shadows. So there's something. What's causing that stench? I said, rats, but it could be something else. It could be anything else other than rats. It just seems like rats. And he has these flickering candles, but it's causing shadows on the wall. So what's causing those shadows? Other than the candles, they're causing the shadows. All right, and Lady Miss Sky, what'd you get?
Near Naybob, there seems to be a patch of wood that could possibly lead to an underground tunnel, or could it be a trap of some sort? And it is easy to notice the weapons his goonies have. Not phasers exactly, but blunt objects with sharp nails at the end.
Ooh, so she described the type of weapons that they had. So, she described, what was the very beginning part that you described? I'm going to go ahead and draw it onto my map.
It was like a trapdoor, like a wooden patch of wood.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and put our patch door right here. Maybe something to the secret dungeon underneath. I'm going to go ahead and put my vents. I was describing vents, and I'm going to go ahead and say that my vents are these dots around the pillars here. The big pillars, these vents, that's where the stench is coming from. That's where the stench is coming from. And let's go ahead and let's say that the candles were up in the walls over here, the walls. So I'm gonna just draw some like little fire symbols around the wall over here. Maybe some big candles. There we go. Add some ambiance in here. All right. Back into our story. Talking to Naybob. A dialogue with Naybob. What's going to happen next? You have skills, you say. You have skills. Perhaps payment is what I need. 2 million Imperial credits.
R6, did you bring money?
F6? No.
F6.
No, not exactly. I didn't really. We kind of used it all just to get here.
I forgot. What are we here for?
We need to get information from the droid.
About what?
About the Imperials. It's Imperial information.
Does he like Imperials, or does he not like Imperials?
I'm not quite sure. I just know he likes money.
He likes money.
I just know he likes money.
Yes! I like money. Do you have any, Bob?
Mr.
Naybob?
Naybob? Hey, Naybob, Bob, Naybob. That's kind of cool. I don't have money, but if you have a job that I could do for you and get you some money that maybe your little goonies up here are too chicken for, we could maybe make an exchange. Service for info.
What do you have to offer as a service? I already have all of the minions that I need.
Oh, I'm sure there's stuff you need that they can't do. Because they suck.
And your friend, what do you offer?
I offer strength and also somewhat of a quick wit.
All right, we're going to go ahead and stop, and we're going to think. So we have F6, who's a damsel in distress. Damsel in distress. What would you have if you were playing as F6? What would, remember, we're not trying to win the day. We're trying to write our character so that they are successfully the damsel in distress. So go ahead, take a quick minute and write, what would your character do if you were playing the damsel in distress? How would you immediately get yourself into trouble right now? Immediately get yourself into trouble right now. And also, take a minute to do that. And now take another minute to do if you were the trickster. So far, David is playing Creep. One, he's tricking him by saying his name is Bob. So he's already saying his name is Bob, so he's tricking him that way. And now he's trying to use a little bit of humor, and he's trying to offer some services. What is something he could trick him about? Maybe he wants to find out where his computers are so he could do it himself. So he's going to go searching around and disappear or something like that. So go ahead. We're going to take a quick minute. We're going to have you guys write down what you guys think these characters should do as the archetypes. And we're going to have them write it down, but we're not going to have them tell it to us. We're going to have them play it in a minute and 30 seconds. Ready? Go. So, go ahead. Write down what you think you should do so you could be a damsel in distress, immediately get into trouble, and be a trickster. Quick minute.
I don't know anymore.
Just yours, just yours. All right. Back into the game. If you need more time, go ahead, just pause it and come on back. But we're going to start with our damsel in distress. Naybob is looking at the both of you, not thinking that you can actually help him. You're playing as your character, the damsel in distress, the one who's always getting themselves in trouble. What do you do?
I say, alright, if you won't help us, then maybe I'll make you. And then I pull out my phaser and shoot it above his head.
Oh, excellent! A laser beam goes off. Quickly! Creep, who's calling himself Bob. What do? Chaos begins to happen as the different minions run around.
I run behind the pillar, smelling of death.
Excellent. So we're going to move your character on over here to this pillar.
That's right.
Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Moving. There you go. You go on over here. Now, when you get on over here, what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and make a perception check. So, use your perception.
Cunning. 3.
And presence.
I
So
get-
roll 3 of them for me.
But I get 1 yellow, right?
Perfect. There you go.
Come on, Betsy.
All right. You got 1 in there. And so he notices that the smell is not coming from 1,000 rats, but underneath he sees a giant monster in a dungeon that is just slimy, walking underneath. And at that very moment, his eyes catch its eyes, and they're looking at each other.
I pull my blaster out and shoot it.
Excellent. You're gonna have to shoot through the grate.
Yes.
So,
Stick my gun into the grate and
you're
shoot.
gonna use light ranged weapons.
Can't I stick it into the grate and shoot?
Yeah, you'll still have to use light ranged weapons. So that's gonna be your agility. So just roll 3 green ones. Oh, excellent! He got 3, which means he does 5 damage to the monster. Excellent. And at that very moment, the monster itself goes "Rah!" and screams very loud, and it reaches up and it smashes from underneath the dungeon. The pillar goes all the way down, and it smashes the pillar that Crete is hanging out on, and that side of the entire dungeon begins to collapse and crumble downward.
Can I jump off of the crumbliness?
On your turn, you're gonna have to wait for your turn.
No.
At that very moment, Naybob says, "Get me out of here!" And these goons come on over and they grab his seat that he's on, and it lifts into the air, boop, his anti-grav thing, and they push it into a secret door, and the door now closes. The room continues to crumble some more. F6, what do you do?
I couldn't run after him.
Nope, they were too quick.
Alright, too quick. Everything's crumbling.
You can make a perception check.
I have none in perception.
You can still make it because it's based off presence. So you can
Okay.
just do 2 green ones. Excellent! You have 2 blasts. You notice that after the door had closed, you see the mechanism that lets you open it.
I run to the mechanism and try to open it.
Alright, you run, you push the button. The door begins to open. As it opens, you notice it gets jammed and it's quickly going to close back, but you have a brief moment where you can go inside if you want.
I go inside.
Goes inside, and the door closes. At that very moment, the rest of the room collapses on down on itself. And there, Crete is standing before a gigantic, goblin-like, ooze-filled monster with its fists raised in the sky. Alright, so that's where we're going to stop our story for today.
Oh. Ooh.
Your job, your homework, is to write what happens to both of these characters and email it to me, okay? So, write what happens to Crete and write what happens to F6, okay? Other than that, I want to go ahead and give a quick round of applause to Lady Sky for being so good. Good job. Excellent job. And also to Sir Mr. David. Now, in your writing, make sure that the damsel in stress is getting into trouble just like she did. Or, it's F6. Ran behind the door, shouldn't have been running away from the rest of the team. And is probably now getting caught and captured. So,
Thanks for leaving me.
excellent.